So I'm going to show you what I use for my firewood hauling, whether that's picking up wood or delivering wood. This truck here, I upgraded from a pickup because of all the volume that I was doing and all the driving that I was doing. I used to have a 6-liter Chev, aka a 6-liter Chev. It's just a regular pickup box with a tailgate on it. That helped picking up the wood when you get the big piece. I was looking for something that dumps. So I ended up finding this truck. It's a 93 Sierra with the 6.5 turbo diesel. They're not the greatest motors. They have some issues. There's not many choices out there when you're looking for a truck. What I needed was the ability to hold 2 bush cords and make it worth it, you know, hauling around a lot of wood. So what I did was I asked a friend to help me out because I didn't have any welding experience at all, really. Just barely, nothing worth mentioning. So I said I want to build this truck up. So what I did was, I'll get up in here so I can show you guys better. I got some 8-inch square tubing and I cut it right down the center. So that's how I made these pieces here, right? And one up here, one there, one there, one there. And then I actually used to have some boards up here, but it's costing me in fuel and power because of aerodynamics, right? And I have a tarp which I would wrap around one of the beams, and then I just have the tarp hanging down here. I'd actually fold it up and I'd have a couple bungee cords holding it up off the floor here, right? So it doesn't blow around and stuff. So I'm actually going to modify this, and I'm going to take out this last board. I'm going to put a whole piece of mesh in here. There used to be a light bar that I had across with the 3 lights in the back, but I don't use this anymore, and I can't even use the bar now because the wood has pushed out the walls that you can't even fit that piece in here. But this wood is held up. This has been 5 years right now. It gives you a little spring, so if your loads are a little wider, you know, you have that little bit of play. Sometimes you put stuff in the truck and you have hard time squeezing it in there because there's no play, right? So I kind of got to watch how I can load it. I'm also in the scrap recycling business too, so this truck comes in handy. This box is 7 feet across, and the original walls, this is 2 feet high, and then the top here is 3 feet high, right? And then I want it to go 5 feet high, and it's 11 feet back to here. And where the tailgate is, this is the control box and the mechanism for the tailgate inside here. So this is actually the end of the truck, right? But I actually bought this tailgate another place out of town, because that's where you find all this good equipment here. Like, I'm in the city of Toronto, and there's lots of good equipment that's just sitting around up north that's ready to be sold. So I had some extra metal too, like these gusset plates that I used here, right? And I thought this whole idea up, and I asked somebody to come and help me weld, but they never ended up coming. So I ended up doing this myself. So this whole job here, I did myself, and I can't believe it too, that I actually did this. I had some bad welding rods that wouldn't get going properly, so there are some bad welds, but they've actually held up to strength. But I've also had a problem with, or sorry, not a problem, I've actually stress tested this by accident. Because what happens is, when you go to dump your load, every once in a while, or it happened like 2 or 3 times, I leave my trailer hitch underneath. And then what happens is, if you go and you dump the load, then this whole mechanism here comes down and it gets crushed on the trailer hitch. So you can see where it's actually gone in up there, and it's bent that whole section. So what I've had to do is go, and you can't hammer it because that steel is so thick, and then also it blocks the tailgate mechanism and the chain and everything from going up and down, so you can't use the tailgate. So what I'd actually have to do is take off this panel, which is a nightmare, and then I would have to put a 2x4 on the inside and back it up to my roll-up door into the frame, and I'd have to back the truck up so I could push out that metal there, right? And it just barely gets out of place. It doesn't really hamper anything, but that's been a problem for me. So I always got to make sure that I don't use the trailer hitch, or at least I take it out. But I don't really use it anymore anyway. But you can see my welds here, they're a little shoddy and stuff. You know, this is the first side I did, right? But like I said, the structural integrity of those welds have been tested, and I've had no breakages, right? So up here you could see the welding's a little better. Actually, even this side is like, here is like okay. Let's see the other side. I'm gonna open the hood for you guys too. So yeah, see, these are a little, they don't look that clean, but they are better welds. But then when I started getting on the inside, you could see some of it is better, right? But yeah, I had to line this gate up with a forklift truck and strap it to the truck and then start welding it on from there. It's a little wider than the truck, so I had to put a piece of angle iron here on either side so that it could sit, because this frame here, the square frame, you could see hardly any of it would be stuck to the truck if I did weld it there. So it was a fun job, you know. I also had to redo some of the floor. The back half of the floor is what I did, and you could see there's some holes in the floor up there. I've got the ribs and I got the sheet metal to go do all that. And like I said, when I go and get things repaired and sorted out, my torsion bars are busted in the tailgate, so it doesn't spring up easy. I have to lift the weight of it. I'm gonna put some more hooks inside and stuff. And what else? Yeah, I'll get that floor done. I'll get the mesh up there, and then the box will be good to go. But I've done so much work on this truck, it's ridiculous. It costs money. I've made money, but it still costs money. Let me open the hood here, and I'll show you guys what I did. Okay, so you could see there's a bolt missing here on the intake manifold, and I'm getting a tiny bit of seepage of fuel over time. But I just had this motor rebuilt last year, and you could see I had to buy a new intake manifold, all the exhaust downpipes and everything I had to buy. I had to go like an hour and a half away for those. I just changed the alternator the other day. The power steering pump, I just put this rad in. You could see it's like brand new here, right? I had the old copper brass rad. It was like 28 years old, that rad, right? I just had a new aluminum rad put in. Because this battery was dead, I replaced this a couple years ago, this one. But then this one I replaced, and then I noticed it was not smoking as much anymore. But here, this is another key thing here too. I took out the AC compressor, and I bought this AC delete pulley, or AC bypass pulley. So now I get a little bit of extra horsepower, and I have less weight in the truck. So much stuff that I've done to this engine and everything. I also got the new belt lately. I've done all the front end. I did the shocks. I had a busted leaf spring I had to replace. I just got my door latch, because you can see it just came in the mail yesterday. You can see my door doesn't close, but I just changed the pins in here too. There's the new pins. My drive shaft cost me almost 800 bucks. I changed this tire in the front twice because I'm getting all the nails in the tire at the scrapyard. So all my tires are good now. And what else? Oh yeah, I'll tell you another funny story. So when I first got this truck, I was going up to Muskoka, which is like an hour and a half away. It was hot, and the truck was loud. There's obviously a hole in the exhaust. So I'm driving up, and then all of a sudden I smell like something's burning. You know, I thought it was like maybe my tranny starting to go, right? Because the truck used to really struggle going on the highway, and especially when I had all these boards up there causing me the wind resistance, which makes a big difference. But I started smelling the smell, and I started seeing smoke in the cab, right? So that's when you're in like panic mode, you know what I mean? Not necessarily because you're going to have a fire, because you're going to lose the truck. I mean, I'm just thinking, okay, well, I got to get towed. And I'm like, where was I then? Yeah, I was past Barrie. So I was I was over an hour away. I might have been more than that. Somewhere up that way anyway. But this truck started to smoke, and I started to see it come from underneath the floor. So then when I went and pulled up the carpet in here, a flame comes up. So I guess that heat that was there, what happened was I had a hole in the floor, and then the exhaust heat was coming out of the hole and going through that floor, and it was singeing the carpet. So when I lifted up the carpet, it just gave enough oxygen so that it started to smoke. So I had a little fire going on, and I realized what it was. So I had the floor replaced, and it's all good now. But this truck has done me well. I've spent tons of money on it, but it's done its task. I do a lot of driving out of town. When I got the motor rebuilt last year, I had to work in the motor, right? You can't just get in the vehicle and, you know, put it under load and get on the highway and stuff like that. I had to do 1,000 kilometers, which is about 625 miles, to break in the motor, and I couldn't go more than 80 kilometers or an hour, or 50 miles an hour. I had to do all this driving out of town up through all the main roads out of town that have 80K speed limit. And I had to go all the way around Lake Simcoe, which is like, Lake Simcoe's larger than Toronto. I ran around the whole thing. I went west into Orangeville. I came down around, I did a loop around the city. I went up to Ajax and I went to Pickering. I did 500 kilometers in one day, or 300 miles. The next day I did it again, and I did a whole loop around the Peterborough Lakes area. And there's a place where I got really cheap diesel at the time. And this is just before the lockdown too. But I did the whole 500 kilometers the next day. I even had to come, when I got back from Peterborough, I still had to do a loop around the city and everything, right? And I was driving through snowstorms and everything, like it was ridiculous. But I did that 1,000K or 625 miles of driving in 2 days, not going over 80. So I came back to the mechanic 2 days later and I said, yeah, I have the record for breaking in the motor the fastest. It was an engine rebuild shop, right? He says, well, there's a guy who has that record. But he told me the story, and what happened was the guy, he went on the toll road highway because it's wide open, right? Not wide open, but there's a lot less traffic than the major highways in the city. And the guy just went like high speed, you know, like maybe, you know, 75, 85, 95 miles an hour, 120, 130 kilometers an hour. And he just went and he drove fast so that he could break in the motor. So what happened was the motor blew. So he came back to the mechanic and said, oh, you messed up my vehicle, right? He says, no, that's not possible. If you're going on the highway, you voided your warranty. So the guy went and complained to the credit card company, and they took the money from the mechanic, right? So he called the credit card company and he said, listen, this guy was going on the toll highway and he was obviously, you know, speeding on the highway. You know, he's not doing 80 kilometers or 50 miles or less. So they said, okay, no, we're going to give back the mechanic the money. So I hold the record for doing 1,000 kilometers or 625 miles of driving in 2 days. And then after that, I got back into work because my truck was down for 2.5 months. So I was on my face and I had work to do. So I went and got out on the road to get my truck back going. You know, you got stuff to do. Like, you can't hold back. You can't wait around. You know what I mean? I'm not going to sit around driving around the city here and there and, you know, doing a few kilometers here and there, right? So I just got on it. I went out there and I did the kilometers, and then I was back ready to work. I actually had some big calls coming up, so I started to do those, and then it was even more driving. It took me 20 hours to do that driving, 10 hours each day. And then I was finding myself with these new business calls I was getting. I was doing 15 hours of driving a day, right? I kept doing that for months. So a lot of driving in this thing. This thing's been really generous to me. This thing I bought with 235,000 kilometers, which would be what, about, I don't know, 140 miles for like $4,000. I've done 100,000 and I've had this truck for 5 years. So, you know, if I had known I had to spend so much money on this truck, then I would have gone and bought something else. But hindsight is 20/20. You never know until you get into it, right? But like I said, it's too hard to find anything else, especially with something that's set up like this. I can find a landscaping truck, but not like this. I won't find one with the high walls. You know, I might be able to find one with a tailgate. My next vehicle is going to be Duramax, right? One of the ones, like, not the early 2000, because I heard they have some problems with the injectors and stuff, and I've seen some trucks that they're trying to sell because they have those problems with the injectors. So I'll look for something like, I don't know if it's like mid to late 2000s or something. I'll look for something like that. But anyways, guys, that's my work truck, and thanks for watching. I'll see you in my next videos. Got more coming.